try to do that.
Do we still need the cell phone?
Yeah, I'm not getting any reaction out of my computer. I'm trying to page up here, and it is not cooperating. Okay, just hold on a minute here. All right, so we're going to start over again. From the top.
From
Yes?
the top.
Okay. So the title of the study is To Enlist in the Prayer Force. And these are clearly military terms, to enlist. And you should be seeing a silhouette of 3 F-22 aircraft. Cutting edge, highest technology, most advanced, most deadly aircraft they claim on the face of the earth. And it's just kind of a non sequitur thing when you look at these aircraft and you see the word prayer and force. It's not words that you normally put together. Normally we think of prayer, at least I traditionally thought of prayer as a kindness shown to others. You know, it's a kind act to let other people know that you're praying for them. And it's, in fact, it is. It's a merciful thing. It can be a great deal of gentle assurance to someone else to know that you're praying for them. Or if you're praying on your own behalf, you know, as a humble request or a quiet, intimate conversation with their Father. But the word force doesn't normally come in there. This is gentle, this is assurance, this is humility. So the word prayer and force is kind of a non sequitur. It's kind of a disconnect. It's kind of, it looks like hyperbole. But in fact, there are places and times where these two are very, very much connected. James 4 and verse 7. Now I'd want to ask real quickly, who is the book of James written to? This is kind of a hypothetical question, because I'll answer it. As you know, the book of James is written to the diaspora, all of the tribes that are dispersed. And presumably these are the faithful remnant, the people that understood and have the background. This is not written to people that are new Gentile congregations. Now, these are people that are seasoned and dedicated and faithful and called. And it's interesting, they're directed to submit themselves to God. There's quite an assumption there. If you're going to submit yourself to God, you must know who He is, who the Father is, who the Son is, what their will is, what their objective is, what their voices sound like, what their direction is. And then you are to yield to them. Verse 8, draw close to God and He will draw close to you. It's interesting that both verse 7 and verse 8 have us initiating, the called believer initiating, you submitting to God, you drawing close to God, and He will respond and draw close to you. But if you take a look, if you can see the screen, chapter 4 and verse 7, submit yourself to God, and then there's a ... And if you're familiar with rules of writing, that indicates that there's more there. But still the question is, where does this force, when would you use force? When would it be applied to prayer? Where would the force come from? As you think about, let's see, we as human beings, we're not power sources. We're children. We're unable. And who would it be used on? So we're still kind of dealing with this anomaly of what prayer force. Yes, I know we should seek God. And I know that if we draw close to Him, He will reciprocate and draw close to us. But this force part just still seems to be a disconnect. Well, if you take a look at this second half of James 4:7, it says to submit to God. And the second part of that is to resist the devil and he will flee from you. The word resist in Greek, again, if you can see the bottom of the screen, is to set oneself against, to withstand, to oppose, to take a stand, to get belligerent and take a stand. Now, when you consider what a frightful, powerful, conniving being this adversary is, we more commonly react with fear. But God is telling us through James or Yaakov, hey, take a stand. Take a stand against him, the opposition, and he will flee from you. And the word flee in the Greek means to literally seek safety by flight, to escape or vanish. Now, when I read this verse, it just kind of drops my jaw. This doesn't make any sense to me, humanly. If this was just a human element, this would make no sense. You got the most deadly, intelligent, conniving, manipulative being that probably has ever been, at least in our frame of reference, that we take a stand against, and then they fly away. They very rapidly retreat. I mean, it screams that there has to be supernatural intervention here. It, to me, indicates very, very clearly that we, upon resisting and taking a stand, are given firepower to reinforce our will. Tremendous firepower. It makes no sense that the beings that wanted to battle are now flying and running. They have to be outgunned incredibly. We have to have, conclusive superior firepower. Our weaponry must be far better than theirs, or they wouldn't run. It doesn't make any sense. But there has to be a supernatural element here. And when you consider this, it's a statement. It's very clear in the Greek. That's what it means. There is clearly a need for this. We need this kind of power, or we would be chewed up and spit out. There's no way we could handle our opposition. We would be consumed in fractions of a second. But with the firepower that he's given us, and it's interesting, it says to submit to God. And that takes the Spirit of God to know what to submit to, who to submit to, what the objective is. And it also takes the Spirit of God to recognize who the foul spirits are and take a stand. We can't do any of this unless we're supernaturally given the ability to perceive and understand. And of course, there are other scriptures that say very, very clearly, when you make these commands, you do it in the name of the Messiah, in the reputation, by the authority, by the sanction of the Messiah. And then they flee from you. This is used commonly in exorcisms. But what we've got here is stopping the event before exorcism. This is what's going on between your ears. This is the salvos that are set at your mind, in your life and your thinking. And you're taking a stand and saying, no. Matter of fact, it may sound really inappropriate, but to have a real attitude against Satan and say, hell no, would be very appropriate. Because we're not going to go to the grave. We're going to be shutting down his objectives. This sounds really ridiculous, but with the power that's been given to you by the Father and through the name of the Son, you are armed and dangerous. You are armed and dangerous to the foul spirits. You have the power to send them running because of what's been, given to us, what we've been armed with. We're just children, but he's given us the armaments to send them flying, to frankly, utterly destroy their objectives, blow them out of the water. So we are armed and dangerous. That's one of the very clear reasons why we're a target. And he wants us frightened of him. He does not want us realizing and fully appreciating that we've got firepower. We take a stand, we call in a strike. He does not want us doing that. He wants us frightened. But the statement's very clear. You will send him. He will vanish. They'll escape. They'll run. Now, basic in battle is to know your enemy. Like I said, we are enemies. We're very focal enemies, and they know us. They watch us very, very closely. We don't know fully what level of surveillance they have. Obviously, they can see, they can hear. Some people feel that they have influence on our mind or can read our minds. There's different opinions on that. But you can be assured these are brilliant, strategic enemies that know mankind very well. They know how we tick, and they've watched all of us. They know the chinks in our armor. They know us real well, and it's only appropriate that we know them. We know how they tick. In Ephesians 6 and verse 12, it writes, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood." Now, the word wrestle here is a Greek word that means it's a contest in which two endeavor to throw the other. In some wrestling contests, when you throw them out of the ring, you get the points. In our high school type wrestling, you win by points and reversals and takedowns and pinning, of course. But this is a little bit different. It's when the victor is able to hold his opponent down with his hand upon his neck. And depending on the type of performance this is, I would imagine many times if it was in an arena, a coliseum, it was in fact ended in death. There's no surprise that we have an enemy that wants to end this in death. They want to take us out. Now, we all know this verse. The ones that we're really wrestling with are not flesh and blood. And I got to be real honest with you. I've gotten really angry with a lot of human beings and human organizations because I feel I was wrestling with them. Really got me annoyed. Burned up a lot of time, exerted a lot of energy, and probably took its toll on my physical well-being, getting cranked with other people. Now, I'm not saying that people have no role in this. It's just that the puppeteers, the ones that are probably pushing and pulling and manipulating the human beings, are the foul spirits. You know, Christ said a real mouthful when he said, "Forgive them because they don't know what they're doing." I have to admit a lot of times that, you know, I know this verse, but I really didn't act like I believed it. I was sure it was all done intentionally, and they were the ones that threw me out. They were the ones that falsely accused. They were the ones that stole, that lied, that abused, that neglected. I mean, you name the fault. But the Messiah said, "Hey, I want you to grow to the point. I want you to get a good handle on who your enemy is. Forgive the human beings because they don't know what they're doing. They've probably been put up to a lot of these things." Satan knows how to push our buttons. I think he not only is good at pushing our buttons, he's pretty good at standing on them and or taping them down. But to be able to get to the point where we cut people slack and be able to place it in our mind that they really don't know what they're doing. They're being manipulated. And they're being used by our enemy. But our real enemy is not the human beings. You know, a good enemy will always keep you guessing. What angle is he going to come from? What altitude? What pieces of equipment will he use? what time of day, what approach, what strategies will he use? And the foul spirits are very, very good. They're very diversified in the way they attack. But the best enemy, and please listen to this, the best enemy will get you to attack somebody else. I've seen that he sucker punched me so many times. I get so cranked with other people that I realize that I'm getting cranked with the wrong ones. I'm taking a stand against the wrong ones. I'm calling in a strike on the wrong ones. I'm not going to the source. I'm not nailing the commander of this army. I'm just getting mad at the privates that are doing his bidding. Ephesians 6:12 continues, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities. Kind of an unusual word, Old English translation in the King James. But it's a person or thing that commences, that begins in a series, the leader, the ruler. And of course, this indicates entities that have been around a long, long time. Isaiah 14:12 says, oh, how you're fallen, or could be translated, thrown down from heaven. Lucifer is quite a significant mistranslation, probably should be Halel. Halel, you son of the morning. How are you thrown down early on? So we're dealing with beings that have been thrown down early on. They've been around a long time. They know the ropes. They know mankind. They know this field far better than we children do. We're also battling against powers. Now, this word in the Greek indicates that it's a power of choice. Evidently, the foul spirits have been given some liberty on the face of this earth. It talks about this word indicating a liberty of doing as one pleases, the power or of authority or power of influence. Well, we surely see a great deal of influence. The power and of right and privilege, the power of rule. So we're dealing with very influential, psychologically, environmentally. And they've had the power of choice. And of course, this is exactly what humanism is. You define what's right. You define what's wrong. Liberty of doing as one pleases. 2 Corinthians 4:4, in whom the God of this world has blinded the minds of them which don't believe. So just a very good fit for who we're dealing with. The ones that have the ability to blind the minds, to so obscure the thinking, they don't know up from down. These are the beings that are working us over. They can muddle our minds unless we have the Spirit of God, unless we're discerning, unless we're taking a stand. Also, the rulers of darkness. The word for ruler in Greek is the Lord of the world, prince of this age. Top dogs here. And of course, Ephesians 2:2 talks about the prince of the power of the air. Now, this is symbolic, I assume, of the airwaves of what thinking is going on. The spirit that now works in the children of disobedience. The spirit that now works in the children of disobedience can be working on us too. Goes on to say that we're also battling against spiritual wickedness. Now, the word for spirit in Greek is pneuma. We use this term for describing things that are run by air, pneumatic tools. So this is a pneumatikos, referring to or relating to the human spirit, that which possesses the nature of the rational soul. And then the wickedness is depravity, iniquity, wickedness, malice. This is the character of these beings. Now you realize we're in a battle with foul spirits that play dirty. There's nothing fair or right about the way they play. There's nothing honorable about what they're doing. They are deranged and depraved. They are malicious. They are out to destroy. We have seen some of this malice poured out. Back in '05, when a friend that several of us know fairly well went in and shot up, killed 7 people and then himself while attending a church of God. Sometimes it's very, very obvious what these false spirits do. And this is blatant. This is over the top. There's no question what was going on here. But they can also be very subtle. 1 Peter 5 and verse 8 says to be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion walks about, seeking whom he can devour, whom resists steadfast in the faith. I found it interesting, this word sober in the Greek means to be calm, to be collected in spirit, to be circumspect, not frazzled, not shaking in your boots, to be calm and collected in spirit, because you know the power that's given to you through the name of the Messiah by the Most High God, the power to send your enemies running. Be sober, be vigilant. Yes, we need to be on our game. We need to be watching and thinking very carefully. What's coming between our ears? What kind of thinking are we doing? What kind of influences are we around? What are others that we're around saying? It says your adversary, the devil, and he is our adversary. Like I said, we are prime targets because we're dangerous. We're armed and dangerous. But it's interesting, he goes around as a roaring lion. I had seen film footage on television of roaring lions, and it was impressive. But we were at the zoo during the fall feast this year in Madison, Wisconsin, and there was a pride of lions there, several females and at least one male, and he was getting pretty cranked about things, and he was snarling a little bit and then growling a little bit. And we had walked away. We were, I don't know, maybe 500-600 feet away. He lets out a roar. I mean, it was alarming. I guess a lion's roar can be heard up to 3 miles away. And what it does is it kind of petrifies you, and you're so frightened you can't move. But he's going around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he can devour. But look what it says in verse 9. Whom resist, and it's exactly the same word, take a stand, and resist steadfast. The word for steadfast in the Greek is phenomenal, strong, firm, immovable, solid, hard, rigid. We've got an attitude here. We're taking a stand and we ain't moving. We're not backing down. We know what's right, and we know who defends that which is right. Whom resist in the faith. You're resisting in something that you are convicted about. It is a conviction. It is not negotiable. You resist steadfast. You resist strongly. You resist with an attitude. And when he begins working you over, getting you angry, getting you discouraged, getting you frightened, whatever the negative is, you take a stand. Take a hard, strong stand. There are 3 books that I think that can be really helpful. We've read them. We've found them to be very, very helpful when you're coming to learn about the characteristics of our enemy. There's an author by the name of Roger J. Morneau, and this picture on your PowerPoint may not be real clear, but the last name is Morneau, M-O-R-N-E-A-U. And the title of it is A Trip into the Supernatural. This is a man that had at one time actually belonged to a Satan Satanist cult with the satanic priests and the satanic rituals. But he brought out, and this was a true story, this is literally his account of coming out of that and the harassment that he got in doing so. And he became a Seventh-day Adventist. I don't believe he's alive anymore. But he brought out some things that I had never thought of before, never really conceived of before. Normally, when we think of demon influence, we think of rattling chains, knocking on walls, frightening things, or possession and strange, destructive personal behavior. But he brought out that the demons can also enhance your skills and can make you very, very successful, very powerful. And it can go beyond enhancing skills and even giving skills. And he recounted numerous stories of people that were musicians or authors in government, etc. And I thought, wow, this is pretty powerful information here. This begins to make a lot of sense to who our rulers are and how they came to be the rulers and to have the power and the control and the influence that they have. The book in the center by Frank Peretti is actually a combination of two books, This Present Darkness and Piercing the Darkness. And these are both mythical. They're not literal. They're not true stories, true accounts. But what he does is a very good job of illustrating an entity that we know is there. The spirit realm is not something we can see, smell, taste, touch, or hear, or unless they choose to manifest themselves. But he goes through and he personifies and paints the picture of some of the power plays that are going on and the influence that are going on behind the scenes. They're really well-written books, both of them. And it really was eye-opening and expanding to us in this battle and getting to know our enemy better. The book Biblical Foundations of Freedom was written by Art Matthias. There are a number of really valuable things in here. Parts of this were written quite a few years ago, and I think it was written by multiple people that didn't have a real good handle, in my opinion, on a number of the foundations, biblical foundations. But he does bring up a number of really valid points here. It says, destroying Satan's lies with God's truth. He talks about these strongholds, these principalities of Satan, and the things that they work on. We know that they have a whole range of insane attitudes. Obviously, there has been anger, very, very abundantly present with Satan. But there is also bitterness. And he works those spirits in us too. We can become bitter. Or even becoming self-bitter, where we're bitter towards ourselves. We know that he became unforgiving or jealous, envy, spirit of rejection, fear, and probably the strongest one that he has is that of an accusing spirit. And so many times I've seen myself being pulled into a lot of these different attitudes. And it's kind of out of the blue, where it's kind of fun accusing people and imputing motives, and it makes you feel bigger and better. But then you have to ask yourself, well, where is this coming from? And what will this accomplish? Nothing constructive. Nothing constructive. But those three books are worth getting. The third one there is going to take some more filtering, but there still are valuable areas, very valuable areas in it. Now, we've talked about knowing our enemy, getting to know our enemy better. And those three books will definitely help. And obviously, the studying in the Word of God and meditating gives us an ability to discern. It talks about being a discerner of spirits. That's one of the gifts of the Spirit. But a basic in battle is also On the flip side of this, and the wonderful positive flip side of this, is to know your allies. And we absolutely have allies. In 2 Samuel chapter 22 and verse 3, David wrote this. Matter of fact, it depends on which version you read, but I think it indicates in the Hebrew that this is actually sung. And he wrote this right after he ultimately won with Saul and a whole range of other enemies. So he says, "Oh, the God of my rock, in him will I trust." Now the Hebrew here is to seek refuge or flee for protection. And there are those times that we need to do that because we're incredibly outgunned. We'll be crushed like an ant. So we need to go to our power source. We need to go to our refuge and our power source. He's my shield. He's the one that defends. He's the one that covers. He's the one that surrounds. Now it's really interesting. Some of you have heard my study on the Sukkah, or the tabernacle of the Feast of Tabernacles. That word has a root meaning to cover, to surround, to defend. It's a very similar concept. And David had it. He realized where his defense came from. It wasn't us being clever. Our defense comes from the power that the Most High and our elder brother give us. They cover us. They surround us. The horn of my salvation. Now the word salvation is based on the Hebrew word yasha, which is very similar to the word Yeshua, meaning deliverance, rescue, safety, welfare. Love the last meaning, victory. It's through the power of God that we are victorious. We're not just in a battle after battle after battle after battle, but there is a victory here. This is where this is going, is to a victory. My high tower. This is an interesting Hebrew word, meaning and can mean a refuge, a secure height, a stronghold. But the root word means to be inaccessibly high. We're out of reach, too high to be captured. We're out of Satan's reach when we are drawing upon the Father, when we are taking that stand. He's also our refuge, a place of escape. From the root, to put to flight. Isn't this interesting? The root word is quite different than a place of escape. To put to flight, to drive hastily, to cause to disappear. Does this remind you? This is almost an identical meaning to the word of how Satan will flee. So not only are we protected, but he drives away the enemy. It's kind of a dual meaning. My Savior, you save me from violence. Both come from the Hebrew word yasha, to be delivered, to be liberated, saved in battle, and again, to give victory. No, we're not just saving our hides. There is a victory here. He's given us the power to be victorious. That's so inspiring. And he's saving us from violence. Again, we've got an enemy that is playing dirty. Wrong, cruelty, injustice. From the root, physical and ethical wrong. Saving us, protecting us, being victorious over all of this. Exodus 23 and verse 22. It says, but if you shall indeed obey his voice, the voice of the Most High, the voice of the Anointed Son, and do all that I speak, then I will be an enemy to your enemies. I will be an adversary to your adversary. I'm thinking, wow, you talk about being well connected. You talked about having a bodyguard. Here's the Most High. Matter of fact, El Shaddai, that Hebrew word means the most powerful, or the ultimate in power, or the one that power comes from. He's the one that becomes an enemy to our enemies and an adversary to our adversary. And the last few words of that sentence, of that verse, is, "For my angel shall go before you." So this is not a childhood concept where we've got a guardian angel that's looking down on us and it's a kind, gentle looking woman with wings. No, we've got a real powerful source of protection that is an enemy to our enemy and an adversary to our adversary. Some serious firepower here. Psalm 91, the whole chapter is outstanding. Matter of fact, there's a book called Psalm 91, the military version, I think. I don't know the author. We've had the book and we actually loaned it out. But the whole book is just outstanding and is actually given to many, many soldiers that have read this. And again, it's very, very militaristically written. But in verse 11, it says, "For he shall give his angels charge over you to keep you in all of your ways," to guard, to protect, to save our life. This is their objective. These are their marching orders. This is what they're focused on. And again, it's a very fair question. Why is this happening? Because we need this. We need this type of high caliber, deadly defense because we are sought out. We are dangerous to the objectives rather of Satan. This is their focus. This is what they do. There's other scriptures that talk about this also. This isn't just something you make your kids feel good about by saying that you have angels, guardian angels. Oh yes, you do. And they've got firepower and they're going to protect you because that's their job. And their righteous angels are going to do what they were told to do. And they're going to do it very, very well. And it's great to remember that. Isaiah 52 and verse 12. It's really interesting, the confident way that this is written. You're not going to have to go out with haste. You're not going to have to run away. It's not you that are going to be doing the running here. When you're having a face off with the foul spirits, you're not the one that's going to have to go out in haste. You're not the one that's going to go by flight. We already know. It says they'll flee. When you take a stand, when you discern the word of God and submit to him, and when you take a stand against the foul spirits, for the Lord will go before you, and the God, this is Yahweh, will go before you, and the Elohim of Israel will be your rear guard. Wow. So this is the support, this is the protection that's given. But we're children, we don't see this. We don't see this dimension. We don't hear this dimension. But it's clearly, very clearly stated and repeatedly stated. It's every reason that we should have confidence and that we should have boldness. He says to come before his throne with boldness because it is not just a mercy seat. It's a seat and an emanating source of enormous power. Enormous protective power. Hebrews 11 is the faith chapter, a chapter that we're all so very familiar with. And it's a summary of some outstanding men and women. But as they summarize it in verse 33, who through faith, trust, conviction, subdued kingdoms. Is that not exactly what we're doing when we're shutting Satan down? Wrought righteousness or worked righteousness. Again, is that not exactly what's happening when we're shutting him down? And it's not just for ourselves. It says to resist Satan. That is, to resist whatever he's up to. Obviously, resist those things in your own life But we are very closely linked with one another. And you need to call in a firepower, you call in a strike when you know you've got friends and family getting worked over. You can discern what's going on. And you can bring about righteousness, obedience, not destructiveness and disobedience. Obtain promises. And that's really what we're doing. We're looking to obtain the wonderful promise of salvation. But this statement in James is a statement. It is a promise. It's as good as done. You resist, you take a stand, and they're going to run. And those promises will be fulfilled. You stopped the mouths of lions. How very, very ironic when our foul spirit is likened to a lion. And we stopped his mouth. We shut him up, sent him running. Verse 34, we quench the violence of fire. We've been in fiery trials and we're not over with them yet. But with the power of God, with the ability to take a stand, you can put that fiery trial out. You can put that consuming fire and quench it. You escape the edge of the sword. Satan's out to kill us. A sword is symbolic of a weapon. I love this one. Out of weakness, we're made strong. Oh, boy, does that ever talk about me. Out of weakness, we're made strong. We're not there yet, but we're gaining momentum. We're gaining strength. We're gaining vision. We're being made strong, not by us. It's not by us doing exercise of weights. It's by exercising the Spirit of God and obedience to Him, becoming stronger and stronger, more and more deadly, more and more effective at taking a stand. Look at this, became valiant in fight. This isn't about sword fights with other opposing enemies or being fast gun, quick at the draw. This is about driving the foul spirits out. Valiant in flight. Turn to flight the armies of the aliens. Is that not exactly what happens when we take a stand? The alien armies are running. This isn't just hyperbole. This is actuality. So when would this force be needed? To strongly, swiftly oppose Satan. Where would the force come from? Certainly not me. Certainly not you. We're children. We can be confused and discouraged and frightened so easily. The force comes from the invincible heavenly host that God has put there, including the Most High, the most powerful, and the anointed Son. Who would it be used on? The fleeing enemies. But I think it's a very valid point written at the bottom of the screen that you ought to look at very carefully. Who deploys it? Who deploys this power? It was given to us. It's like being equipped with the latest and most deadly equipment. The F-22s and the stealth bombers and the heat-seeking missiles, and you name the high tech. Who deploys it? You have to push that button. You have to take that stand. You have to call in that strike. We have a place to play here. We're children, but we're given the discernment to know when to deploy the incredible power given to us. So in conclusion, with the Spirit of God, we can discern what our enemies' tactics are. And we can take a stand and we can call in a strike. And it will be deadly and it will be effective and it will drive them away. But this is not a one and done. This is a day in and a day out. And we're taking stands for others that are being mobbed and surrounded and beat up and run into the ground emotionally, deeply frustrated, deeply discouraged. And we can take a stand for them and call in a strike, that they would be protected and shielded from the twisted thinking, and drive these foul spirits away, that they are not manipulating and making puppets out of us, but we are driving them away before they ever get a chance. So take a stand and call in a strike. And with that is the conclusion of the presentation. Yes, this is part one. There's also one called the force field, and I may work on others actually.
Okay. Well, at this point, we can we'll open up for questions, comments, ideas, suggestions. On the bottom of your screen, on the left-hand side, you will see a microphone. You click on that, and that will unmute you. So if you have something to say, unmute yourself and ask a question or make a comment. Well, while others are composing their thoughts or trying to figure out how to unmute, yeah, it's very, very good analogy, Sal, about the calling in a strike. You know, I never really thought about, you know, I see the 3 planes sitting there and I think, yeah, you know, we're gonna call in a strike. And it's incredible to think that we have the authority to do that.
Yeah, and the need to do it. It's amazing that kind of power was given to us, but it's sobering that we need that kind of firepower to protect us. And if we don't use it, if we're not alert, well, we see. I mean, it's so clear how many people get taken out of the running. So many people get influenced into the thinking, slowly but surely, disarmed, afraid to use the power that's given to them. And of course, scripture I didn't refer to that applies so well. You know, Satan loves to use the card of fear, loves to use the fear card and immobilize us. But of course, who gave us the spirit of fear? Well, he did. Who gave us the spirit of power and a sound mind? The Father did. Power. we're just reading about the power that we're given, and the sound mind to use it, the sound mind to discern when to use it. So it's it's really inspiring to just link these verses together. And there are many, many others that are, you know, militaristic terminology of just the power that is there, power that's needed.
Paul, this is Gina.
Oh, hi, Gina.
Hi, Gina.
I would sure enjoy hearing part 2 in the future.
Well, that's completely possible. It's
yes,
called
it is.
It's called the force field. And it kind of goes from here, and there's actually a number of different concepts that link to this, you know, this warfare that we're in. But Gina, it's largely because of you posting this on Facebook that this happened again, and I'm hoping that this has been encouraging to people. And these aren't my concepts. These are scriptures, and I just linked them together. And I think I was, given this information to share it because it's so strengthening and so reinforcing. And boy, do we need that.
If you can, it's kind of breaking up, but if you can hear me well, I did want to make a comment. I'm glad I did do this, or got it started, but I'm writing a book, and it was supposed to be done by now, but it's getting there, and it's messages that I have gotten from the Father as I've gardened, and it's called Weeds, and it's about ridding the weeds. And just today, I was actually going through a section of my book and going through the Hebrew of meanings. And I was actually coming up with, I have a few of the ones that you had in this presentation. And I thought, I wonder why these are sounding so familiar. And then as you're going through, I'm like, oh yeah, Hal had those when I listened to him at Lexington. So I'm going to actually use more. I'm going to use a lot of the words and the Hebrew that you brought out in this, and put it in my book, so that it's it'll be passed on even more.
Oh, wonderful.
This is gonna get out to the world. I'm just saying.
Did you say reading your weeds? Is that what you said?
Ridding, yes, using the power of the Father's
ridding.
gardening tools.
Ridding
ridding
yourself of the weeds. Okay, all right.
Yes, weeds, and getting rid of the weeds, and using the power of the garden tools of the Father. I haven't completely figured out what my title is going to be, but it's something like that. I was going to use the word "and the Father's hoe," but I have friends who have told me that I should not do that.
You could, the Father's hoe. You could refer to the Father's Binford 9000 rototiller.
I know. I could use. Somebody actually told me I should use rototiller. I said no. I'm going to stay simple. So I think it'll be garden tools. But anyway, thank you very much, because I'm going to use a bunch of these in my section of my book on this very thing of what tools in the Bible and what tools from the Father do we have at our disposal to rid junk.
Well, it's really such a close parallel. We're able to discern what is a weed and what is a valuable plant and remove the weed. It's just like discerning and taking a stand against what is a false concept, a destructive concept, and what is not. And the source of it.
Yes.
Yeah. And there's the scriptures about the enemy going in and planting the tares. You're probably going to go there. Are you still there, Gina?
Yes, I accidentally muted it. Yes, I do have a lot on tares, all through the book. There's a lot of different things. I even have, well, you'll read it one of these days. It'll be finished soon.
I'm looking forward to that.
There's a lot in this book. There's a lot.
Really looking forward to that. Excellent.
Isn't the real battle not necessarily knowing the difference between right and wrong, but the difference between right and almost right?
Yeah. Gray areas.
Mm-hmm.
And who got you even away from the light into the gray?
Exactly.
You know? Well, it sounds like we didn't have a very controversial topic here.
All right, Hal, let the controversy begin.
Oh, of course it's Turner. Man.
How you doing, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing very, very well. How about yourself?
I'm all right. I'm all right. Hey, what about the fact that sometimes Satan is attacking one of the Father's own little ones, and yet it will not be removed because it's to be used for a greater purpose, for growth,
Yeah.
and that the enemy will not flee because he's appointed to a job such as, let's say, for example, 2 Corinthians 12, where the apostle says, I besought the Lord thrice that it might depart from me. And he said unto me, no, my grace is sufficient for you. So the messenger of Satan will not be removed.
Mm,
So I'm just trying to balance this off with your approach.
right, right.
Sometimes Satan is used in such a way to cause our growth. The other example I have in that same apostle's life was when he lists the extensive difficulty he had, where he says in 2 Corinthians 11, let's see here, 25, thrice beaten with rods, once stoned, suffering shipwreck a day and the night, floating around in the deep, 40 stripes minus one, perils of waters, robbers, my own countrymen, the heathen, peril in the city, the wilderness, the perils of false brethren, in weariness, painfulness, watchings, hunger and thirst, fasting, cold, and nakedness. And not only those things, but that which comes upon me daily, my deep concern for all the churches. So you could misconstrue a painful episode in your life as being attacked by the evil one, when
Yeah,
in fact, it's really for your nurturing.
right, or refining. It's like Job. I mean, you look at what was allowed with Job, and you know, they're most certainly fiery trials, but it's just interesting that something that any of us as a kind of a long-standing believer can say, that we know that the Father and the Son are not destroyers. They don't drive you beyond what you can handle or raise your temperature beyond your flash point. But you know, they're into refining and far hotter than we thought we could handle, and far longer than we thought we could handle it. But the refining, I mean, you think about the, oh man, the horrific description of what you're just had there. And if you personally lived through that.
Well, here, that's the thing. You know, on one hand, we agree with you. He's not a destroyer. But on the other hand, he does not necessarily prevent your flesh or your psyche from being traumatized.
Yeah,
so
that's
there is a lasting result for good.
yeah. The objective is not to give us the top priority is not to give us a long, healthy, happy life. That's not the top objective. Sometimes that can happen, but I mean, there are things that we're going to live through. Like, you know, Christ said, if they believe me, they'll believe you. If they persecuted me, they'll persecute you. I didn't come to bring peace, but war. So, you know, obviously there's things that kind of go kind of counterintuitive.
So maybe one way to balance it off is to say, look, if I'm in severe trial, it isn't necessarily Satan even causing it, but even if it is, it could be for my good that it isn't removed right away.
Right. But I think that, Al, you bring up a very good point. Just because we're having difficulty doesn't mean it's from Satan. It could be self-induced, or it could be for our own learning. But I think that when you get into the discerning of what's really afoot here, who is really doing the influencing? Who is offering the alternative? Who's leading this show, and where is it going to? That's what I've always understood is the one where you call in a strike on when you know you've got a destructive spirit working you over, telling you, Al, you don't have to obey. You can work at this time. You can lie. You can steal. You can
eat the ham sandwich.
You can eat that ham sandwich. Yeah.
Hey, now wait a minute.
We're not talking about turkey ham.
Somebody said that.
Yeah, Lorene is here, and Paul for that matter, but he's being silent so far. Well behaved.
All right, I just wanted to kind of balance it off with that. I suppose one of the ways we know for sure, that we have to flee and resist is when there's something appealing to the fleshly desires.
Yeah.
Right away, we know that that's an attack and that leads you down a path towards destruction.
Right. Well, that lust angle is one, but, so is the anger. Anger can be another. I mean, there's so many of these elements that, are just absorbing the mentality of the foul spirits. Jealousy, accusing. I know of people that are so fearful. They're so anxious and fearful.
Uh-huh.
Well, and they're just driven by it. I mean, it's just ruining their health. Or they become so bitter about things and unforgiving or envious or feel rejection. And a lot of times there's physical elements that brought these things about. It seems that Satan really likes to enhance any of those little chinks in the armor.
Mm-hmm.
So I get it. I know what you're saying. You can't go just with a broad brush and say if you've got any kind of problems, it's from Satan. But I guess that's where the discernment comes in. Resist Satan and he will flee from you.
Yes, because sometimes you can know that it's obvious.
Yeah. And well, that's, it says that one of the gifts of the Spirit is being a discerner of spirits.
Right.
And the spirit that we have is a discerning spirit. Because otherwise, you think about how are you supposed to prove all things and hold fast that which is true if you don't have discernment, and hence you can't prove things.
Right. All right. That clears that up.
Right.
Let's move on to question number 2.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, I'm just kidding. I'll let someone else have a turn.
Great. Nice talking with you.
You too.
Hi, Hal.
Hello.
I've always thought these here verses were kind of neat. Like in Leviticus, talks about it. 26:8, it says, 5 of you shall chase 100, and 100 shall put 10,000 to flight. And there's a Deuteronomy, and it talks about that too. And I also thought that in the physical would be, what a great thing to do. But you can look at that in the spiritual too.
Yeah, yeah.
Where, through the power of prayer, you can put that many to flight.
Yeah, that's one of the verses I had looked at. There's a lot of verses that could have been included here, but I thought this is getting the point across. But it's an excellent contribution. I mean, whether that was a true statement literally in warfare for them, or they're talking about on a spirit level, or both, I'm not sure, but it's still encouraging.
Right.
Yeah, good contribution. So are you seeing milder weather there? And
Oh, yeah, very mild. We're down to T-shirts today.
oh, really?
Yeah.
You were working indoors, so right?
No, we was outside.
Really?
Yeah, I think we had about between 35 and 40. So.
Yeah, that's very similar to what it was here.
Yeah.
Is it Mark?
Yeah.
Oh. Goodness mine.
Yeah. Well, any other comments?
Wait, it was 35 and didn't have a barbecue?
Hey, Al, this is Al Turner again.
Yeah.
Can you take the screen back to your Isaiah 52 quote?
I think so.
It's only 3 or 4 back.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
I think I've got it up now.
Hmm.
This is basically just King James that I've pasted in here. I usually eliminate the these and the thous, but it's pretty much King James.
Okay.
What were you looking for, Al?
When you first had it out there and you were making a discussion on it, something occurred to me and now it's gone. So I don't,
It was a good point, though.
it was at the time. Oh. Yeah, it escapes me now. But there is a verse I would like to point out. This here says, "For the Lord shall go before you,"
Right.
that you have quoted in there. And I think when you were discussing this, I was thinking about what they call the shepherd's Psalm 23,
Oh, yeah. Okay.
where he says, "And even though I'm walking through this valley where there is death, I'm not going to fear because thou art with me."
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Good.
why that psalm is so comforting to people. Because if you really believe and know that that's true, as it says here in Isaiah, the Lord will go before you. In the psalm, he says, "Thou art with me." And
Mm-hmm.
that's a wonderful, wonderful fact to know. That even in the most difficult time, he may say, "I'm not going to remove it yet, but I am with you."
I think it's interesting also that he says, in the valley of death. We're not talking about just the valley of inconvenience or unpleasant or too warm, too cold. No, this is potentially a deadly environment.
Yes. There's another one in Isaiah where he says something about when the overwhelming flood. Let me see if I can find it real quick.
Well, I may be able to switch to BibleWorks and present or project that too.
What was the verse?
He's not sure. He's just looking for it in Isaiah.
Overwhelming.
It was like a flood, overwhelming flood. Did you say, Al?
Well, here's one in Isaiah 59:19. "So shall they fear the name of the Lord from the west, and his glory from the rising of the sun, when the enemy shall come in like a flood." And this is what Satan sometimes feels like in an attack.
Oh, yeah, like a flood. Yeah.
Like an overwhelming flood, as though like an avalanche or like a sudden overpowering or cover, that just covers you in the deep, right? When it comes in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against him.
Ah.
Shall come to Zion. So, I mean, it's just figurative language for kind of like what that attack is like. When the enemy shall come in like a flood, it's symbolic kind of what an attack can feel like.
Well, of the standard, I'd always understood it to be the Messiah, who's the ensign or the standard, leading
Right.
with the flag out in front. Very dangerous position.
Yes.
Well, you've probably seen movies that show armed foot soldiers when they're advancing. And it does look like water flowing, like a flood moving in.
Yes. It covers the land.
Yeah. Hmm.
Al, are you talking about Isaiah 43:2?
Probably.
When thou passest through the waters, I will be with thee.
Yeah, that one. Go ahead,
And,
read that. Read that through.
and through the rivers, they shall not overflow thee. When thou walkest through the fire, thou shalt not be burned, neither
Hmm.
shall the flame kindle upon thee.
Wow.
Right. And that's exactly the one I was thinking of. I think it fits in really nice with even if you're in the valley of the shadow of death, I'm not going to be afraid, for thou art with me. Even though death is all around me or the flood is covering me, thou art with me through this. And I think, Hal, your message kind of fits with that a little bit.
Yes. Right.
But
Utterly faithful. Yeah.
but thank you very much for what you gave. It was very stimulating and thought-provoking for me.
I'm really glad that it was of use to you.
But I'm not going to dominate the remainder of the comments. Thank you.
Would you get a new roll of duct tape or something? What?
No, I got a wife here.
Is she still using that little shock collar on you?
She's saying, back, boy, back.
Yeah, I understand.
We love you all. We really do. Alan, you especially do.
Thank you. It's nice to hear once in a while.
One thing that came to mind, or has come to mind many times, is talking to someone who has had an affliction that doesn't go away, it doesn't go away, it doesn't go away. And then you talk to somebody, someone that you just meet, or someone that just, like, say, came to fellowship or whatever, and they're like, for years I've been watching this person with their problems, and they never curse God, they never blame anybody, and it's actually an example of someone else. Your trial and how you're handling it is a powerful example to those that may be looking for faith, or the whole thing may be for their benefit. I mean,
yes.
Again, looking at Job, God said, if you considered my servant Job, well, you've seen what he does. And he went, he literally went through hell. But it was his example to others. So you may not be facing a trial on your own, or for something you've done or haven't done. It may actually be something that someone else needs.
Oh, that is so true, Don. You nailed that one. Because I think about Joseph in Egypt and what he did, and when he resisted the woman and went to prison, and all the things that happened to that man. It says in Psalm 105, he was in irons, and the irons hurt him, or it uses the word fetters, and he was hurt by the fetters. And so his life was so miserable, and it's such a strengthening factor to the church today, to reflect on the misery he endured, and yet he was able to remain faithful unto the end of his life. So our trials are sometimes for other people. You are so right. But the biblical heroes, I'm sure it was for their personal growth, but it was also so that in the record we would have it for us to strengthen us. Hal, I do have a question concerning David, if you don't mind me asking.
Would it make any difference?
Well, I'm trying to be polite.
Well, why start now?
All right, let's go over to First Chronicles 21 in verse 1. And you spent a considerable amount of time about the word resist and flee. And in First Chronicles 21:1, we see the word Satan appears for the very first time in the Bible. And Satan stood up against Israel and provoked David to number Israel.
Ah.
So what could David have done, or could it have been obvious to David that it was a satanic attack? Should he have known better, and that's why the punishment was so severe? Did he know better, but he was succumbing to his pride and his vanity? I don't know really how this went down. But could he have resisted and then fled from the temptation to number Israel?
Right.
I don't know the answer to that, and I don't know if anybody does. But what was the appeal here? Was it pride and vanity? Was it human strength, to rely on human strength? I'm not sure.
Well, I think there was another occasion where Moses was told to basically take tally for responsibility purposes. But it appears that what David was after was to see what he had for manpower for military purposes. And rather than, trusting in God, he wanted to see, what kind of, how many troops he had. It frankly kind of reminds me of the way the organizations will a lot of times refer to how many people they have attending and what the offering was, and this is a measurement of how strong we are and how big we are. But I don't know, but it was very clear this was a grievous thing to do, and you raised some really great questions. Should he have known better? Clearly it was an entrapment, and he took the bait. And I have to assume that he was looking to his arm of flesh rather than God to determine whether they would win the battles or not. But that's just an opinion.
Yeah, and I think that was the answer that was given years ago in the org churches. But it just isn't real obvious here whether he knew better and could have fled.
Would he have gotten into that much trouble if it was an innocent mistake?
The man who put his hand up to stop the ark from falling off the cart, it was pretty severe.
Well, of course, I don't know that it was done in ignorance or done in carelessness. I mean, it was abundantly clear they were not to take those poles out.
Right, but I don't think it was done in pride. It was done in carelessness, I guess, yeah.
Well, right, and I mean, this is a whole string of people being careless. Those poles were never to be taken out, and it was never to be moved in any other way than with humans. Right. But it was heavy. It may have gone 1,800 pounds or more. So it was a job to move, and of course it makes sense to put it on a cart. It's a lot easier. But it was built in such a way that's very, very top heavy.
Yeah.
And that's what probably created the problem. They were ignoring very clear directives in how it was supposed to be moved. So ignorance, rebellion, I don't know, but yeah, it came down with both feet.
Okay, let's look now over at 2 Samuel 24:1, where we see the parallel account with David. Only this time, instead of saying Satan, it says the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he moved David against them. Number. So there's a little bit of some different information here.
Yeah, it states it a little differently.
I'm just wondering about how he could have fled or could have refused to succumb to the suggestion to violate the instructions of God, and he did not resist it. And all the other places, of course, throughout the Bible where we see many other men and women of faith who did wrong things and did not always resist.
Right.
Which, we have to take some comfort in that, because we're not perfect people. So we can say, well, at least we know that all those who are approved unto salvation had their stumblings.
Yeah. Well, isn't there the psalm that talks about the righteous falls 7 times, but
Yeah.
gets up 8 times, evidently?
I got up 7.5 times already, so I'm getting there.
Well, maybe it starts over again. You never know.
It's cyclical. Maybe 70 times 7.
Yeah, that's good. That's a lot of falling down, though.
All right, Laureen, you're up.
She's
I'm out. I'm down for the couch.
she's vegetating on the couch.
Oh. All right.
No, you said everything that needed to be said.
Yeah, did you hear that?
I'm pretty sure Mike Waters has something, some kind of ace in the hole over there.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. Sometimes my mic doesn't work. What I wanted to say was I really can appreciate your comment about when we have, you might say, senseless conflict between brethren, husband and wife, etc. And that's an indicator that something isn't right here that shouldn't be. If there's an enemy of God attacking us, well, that's one thing. But when they're brethren or family, etc., well, sometimes time will tell that they are on the other side. But if they're not, and we have a conflict with them, then there could be there could be a spiritual attack. And
Yeah.
so I really appreciated that part of what you said.
In Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, I think it says we're not ignorant of their devices. And it's important that we realize they can affect the way we think. I don't know whether it's directly or not. It's debatable, but we're supposed to bring every thought into captivity, subject every thought, and it would only make sense that we would get worked over mentally, and that this battle basically goes on in the mind, and that they can influence that.
Yes, I agree. It's a big point in our own mind. It's as big as it is, in our own mind at the time, but it really may not be that big if we stepped outside of ourselves and could look at ourselves from a third-person perspective.
Right. But I think that, as we mature, we're given better and better discernment of our enemy, and able to, deal with more of his maneuvers. As a young child, we didn't pick up on a lot of things. But as you get to be a little older, you pick up on more body language, more tone of voice, more circumstances, and you pick up on more, and you can read things better. And I think the same is true spiritually, where I'm catching myself. It's kind of like what others have brought up, that you catch yourself thinking a certain way, or becoming angry or jealous or whatever, and you evaluate, whoa, where is this all coming from? And you realize that you've been kind of played. Why did I say that? Why did I do that?
And it's also could be possible that Satan is agitating the other person in order to agitate you.
Exactly. Excellent point. Yeah, and then one will fuel the fire of the other, so you get these battles going on. He loves competition and division.
Yes.
He's a master at it.
Well, you're speaking about the tools at our disposal. I'll put in a plug or an announcement or whatever. Hal gave at Hal's or Hal or somebody gave a Bible study on tools of fasting and prayer, and that launched not interactive, but a live prayer and fasting day declared, and then using Zoom, actually having a live prayer session. There is one scheduled this Sunday, day after, well, Sunday, this weekend, Sunday at 1 o'clock. Same meeting number as what we're using here. And there's a couple people here who have participated in that. May can explain a little bit more what's done.
I guess I should be the one from the group that speaks then. The subject came up during our study at Hal's about the chronic problems, especially interpersonal conflicts, and that can only come out by prayer and fasting. And so that's when we thought it might be a good idea to do that as a group, because in a sense it's intercessory. In the other sense, by doing the fasting personally, we can take that whole day personally to as a personal day of drawing close to God. So we're, in a sense, it's introspective, but then by getting on the Zoom meeting and sharing with each other and praying, we can pray for each other and also, in a sense, do intercessory prayer for other situations or things that come up within our fellowship, or but I think at this point we're still doing a lot of introspection and seeking to draw closer to God, and so, but we do go around everybody. We try to have everybody that's online participate, and then not only pray, but then discuss personal issues, things like that. And so, I guess from the point of all humility, being really introspective first of all, and then see where we're led to go in prayer, and see what comes of it all.
To participate in that, you would could go to, well, up in the corner of your Zoom meeting, it says your Zoom ID number is 415-366-0682. We're going to use the same number. You can go to thinkgod.org and click on the calendar link. It'll bring you in the meeting, or click on the words that say click here for meeting. Or hopefully someday we can actually get a physical, gaudy, disgusting-looking button on the web page that you can click. So that you just basically come right in the meeting at 1 o'clock and introduce yourself, and goes from there.
Well, it's a good service that you provide, Don and Peg. That's good. That's benefited quite a few people just in that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's what we've been trying to do all these years. It's just everyone has their gifts, and we just try to use ours to the best of our ability.
Well, you do have a lot of ability, so it's always works out in being a good gift.
Technology. So, any other comments, thoughts, ideas? If not, we could call it a night.
Well, very good. Thank you for hosting, and we'll see you all when we see you. God bless you all and strengthen you, and continue strengthening the brethren.
Thank you.